Good afternoon or good morning, depending on when you're listening to us. I'm Michèle, and it's Jasami Bookworm podcast. And I'm delighted to say that we have our first author interview for this podcast is with Sheralee Ryan, and she's in Zambia. So welcome to the first author interview with Jasami Bookworm podcast, Sheralee.
Thanks, Michèle. It's lovely to see you again and to be chatting with you.
Yes, well, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to see you and then to actually, in a way, visit another part of the world. So the first question, I know we've asked a lot of author questions for you, so I'd kind of like to go back to the beginning and to hear the story about the first animal that was brought to you that needed to be fostered and was rescued. Could you please tell us a little bit?
Sure. Here in Kulumbila, it was Sheralee. Sheralee was our very first rescue. And although we didn't rescue him, he was brought to us by a fantastic guy who was working shifts, and he rescued baby Sheralee and couldn't cope with the hours. Feeding a baby squirrel is every 3 to 4 hours, plus he was working shifts. So he called on us and we took over. By then, Sheralee was about 10 days old. So you can imagine Sheralee was absolutely finished. He was exhausted, and he handed baby Sheralee over very, very joyfully so that he could get some sleep. So we took over from there. But yes, definitely Sheralee was our first baby squirrel here in Zambia, in Kulumbila.
And do you know the story of why he had to be rescued? What actually happened?
Yes, it was quite sad. His mom got killed by a cat, a domestic cat. It does happen quite often when you try and mix wild animals and domestic animals, you know, and a cat is known for its natural instinct to go out and hunt. So I think the cat was just doing what comes naturally to the cat. And unfortunately, Sheraalee's mother was quite vulnerable because she was feeding her baby, or she had just given birth to Sheralee. So it was very sad to find him at such a young age, and he was taken away from his mom and then hand-reared from there.
It's a very touching story, and that I think that talks about the cruelty of life and just nature, is that, you know, when they say the survival of the fittest, and if you hadn't have been there for him, which was wonderful. What do you think is most fulfilling about the rescue work? And I say work, but it's not, you know, it's a loving action that you do. Yes, it's a passion. What fulfillment do you get out of it, Sheralee?
I think without a doubt, it's the release. It's to be able to put that animal back into the wild where they belong. I think that it has been the most rewarding and meant the most to all of us. I think just to take Bila, for example, the owl, that was the most emotional release that we've had. Because she took so long to leave us, she sat with Kieran on that broken down tree for hours. And it was really, it got quite dark before she actually decided to fly off. And I think it was mostly because we didn't ever think we would see her again. You know, an owl going back into the wild and also being nocturnal. They're not going to come in and sit on your veranda and visit. We hoped that would happen, but it was just, you know, a dream of, you know, trying to bring Bila back into our lives. She lived with us for 3 months while she was recovering with her eye. So when she was able to be released, it was very hard letting go. And I think when you see that what should be in nature should be left in nature and not disturbed by us human beings, then you can really understand when you do have that sort of connection with them. It is hard to say goodbye, but it is really the most rewarding thing, is to see that animal back where they belong.
It's very touching because you've taken care of different animals. I know hopefully I'm pronouncing it correctly. Lilo, the young Lilu. I knew I'd get that wrong. Lilu, and she's the blind bird which cannot go back. Could you tell a little of her story, please, Sheralee?
Sure. We came across Lilu in Gebabis. Sorry, I'm talking nonsense. In Katima Malilu. That's actually where her name comes from. So we lived in a small town called Katima Malilu in Namibia. And the baboons came and tore up her nest. So we couldn't even put her back or even attempt to give her back to her parents to take her back, to feed her. So we had to take her. But when we left Katima Malilu to go and live in another town, we tried to release her and we couldn't. She was too young, and also the other birds just wouldn't accept her because she was so much around humans. And she had a very unfortunate accident in Gebabis, which blinded her. And now she's just part of the family. We're 8 years down the line. She's still around and still sitting, chirping and singing. And she is like the little sunshine in the morning when she gets put into her open cage. And everyone here respects her, the dogs, the cats, even when Lola, who still comes inside every now and again, just sort of sees Lilu and leaves her alone. There's no sort of try and compete with Lilu. She's just a little blind bird that sits there and minds her own business. Oh. But she's a real charm to have in the house.
And how long, for the type of bird that she is, how long will she live a natural life?
We can't seem to find any information on this type of bird and how long they think they will live. So I've spoken to vets and asked, what is the lifespan of a bird? And it varies. Obviously, in captivity, they live longer lives because they don't have predators and they don't have to do so much to find food or fly into windows and things like that. So I can't answer that, but we can say definitely, even with her blindness and her head injury, she's going on 8 years. So we know that that's a definite more than 8 years old now.
And actually, it's like a lot in life. Every day is a blessing that we take, that we do.
Sure.
Charlie's quite the character, our favorite. And what inspired you with his characteristics, being friendly and loving, but what inspired you to write the story and inspired you to do it from his point of view? Because that's so different and so creative. What inspired you to do that, Sheralee?
Well, Shani actually gave the lead on his different characteristics, his personality. I just provided the human touch, the words and the emotions that we as humans understand. But he really was the most loving. He was just so adorable. He was cheeky, but in such a gentle way. He loved his Smarties. And he came across as like a naughty little boy. So, if he went outside and I called him, you could see him scurry around the tree and pretend to be busy, but, and then come inside. And the way he used to get tucked into his little bed at night and close his eyes, it was almost like, good night, Mom. So I did put a lot of human characteristics into an animal, but he definitely gave the lead to me on those different characteristics. And it is quite a funny thing that we as humans, we don't really see animals as having personalities unless they're living with us and they're in our lives, and that would be a dog or a cat, a domestic animal. And Sheralee showed all of that, even though we knew he was a wild animal and would eventually go back into the wild. That was always our intention. But he became part of the family. He really was like a little Stuart Little of the Ryan household.
Oh, that's a beautiful way to put that. So when Charlie was going into the wild, how did you reintroduce him to the wild, to his natural home?
I think it's instinctive for wild animals to want to be back where they belong. So again, we let him take the lead on that. And it really was putting him out in the garden, never ever having him caged up or locked up. other than at night. He used to be in his little bed with the window and the door shut, so that there was no, sort of chance of predators coming and taking him. It was very, we were also anxious. Had we taught him, because we're not a squirrel mom, or, we don't know how to tell him to run up the tree if there is some sort of danger down below. But it's instinctive to them. They also know what food to find, what they can and cannot eat, what leaves to go look for to build a nest. And I think, it just becomes such a natural way for them to go back into the wild, and we just need to provide, that window, if that's a good metaphor, to release them and let them go off and do what they need to do.
Yes, it's important in nature, and we need to recognize that. And the way that you do it creates your part of the world, is giving nature, what should occur naturally. And I think you've got another wee squirrel. I understand his name is Billy. Now he's kind of a foreigner. Would you please tell us his story? Because I love his story as well.
Well, Billy was also rescued, not by us, but by a person in Lusaka. Lusaka is the capital of Zambia. It's about 700 odd kilometers away from where we live. So it's quite a distance. But Billy was the name of the rescuer, which is why we called Billy after him. And again, a cat brought him in. He wasn't such a wee baby when he was rescued, but a cat caught him. He was obviously an immature squirrel, not knowing the dangers around. But because he came from the city, they tried to release him again. Just too many dangers. The cat brought him in 2 or 3 times before the rescuer decided we can't take a chance. And he was not harmed. So maybe the cat thought he was a kitten. I'm not too sure. But he was sent to us to rehabilitate, because the thought was, we've already done the same for so many other squirrels. Perhaps there will be a little group that will join with each other, knowing that they've been with humans. They are all pretty much orphans. And we were hoping that they would, sort of befriend him. And that's exactly what did happen. So Billy came a very different personality to Lola and to Sheralee. We actually used to just joke and say, he came from the big city, and he had an expectation. It was almost an expectation of being served. He wanted a lot of attention, and very much a baby, even though he looked like a fully grown squirrel. He just wanted to be babied all the time. And then all of a sudden, one day, I think he noticed, oh, look, there's squirrels outside there, and there's trees, and they're climbing them. And he went off. So we don't see much of him. He really, I think he's been one of the better integrated into the wild, as what others that don't try and, they look after animals and then reintroduce them back into the wild, knowing that they should not come back in human contact. We release the animals, and we want to see them again. We want that assurance and peace of mind that they've survived. And I think most rehabilitators will say that Billy was the better of the releases, because we very rarely see him.
Very rarely. And he has a different personality completely from Charlie.
Sure.
And
very.
What was the most interesting part of his personality, and other than the fact he wanted to be taken care of all the time? That sounds like a nice life.
Oh, we are often used to say, I think Billy misses the nights, the big lights of the big city. So it was, he needed to go and see the big malls and the shops and the, just whatever a big city provides. Whereas we're out here in the absolute bush, it's very rural. So we kind of saw Billy as being a city slicker compared to the other squirrels. Yeah.
More the urban squirrel, he's going to go out and look for that cute little suit, so as portrayed. So that brings us to the other important part of the family, as they all are, but Lola and her different personality. So please tell me a little bit about hers, and then we can describe the story between them.
Lola is the feisty one. She's the one who is extremely strong-willed, doesn't take nonsense from anyone, not the cats, not the dogs, not any human. She really has a very strong personality. She hasn't really left where our home or our garden. For example, if there's no peanuts on the table, she's got absolutely no problems coming through the window and finding out who's here and why there are no peanuts for her. So,
don't neglect.
She's still very much the feisty, mighty Lola. I see her almost every day, which is great. I'm not sure if it's a girl thing, a daughter thing. You don't ever really say goodbye to a daughter. A son will go off and start his own family and get married, but a daughter will always try and stay close to the home that she was raised in. And perhaps Lola's got a bit more of that in her personality as well. So although she's a very strong personality, she still wants the comforts of mom being around. If there are squirrels that are chasing her, or if she gets upset out in the wild, she has no problem finding me, and not necessarily coming to where I can touch her, but coming to me so that the other squirrels will go away. So she's using me in a defensive type of way to protect herself. And I think that also shows her intelligence. She's a very, very clever little squirrel. She's not like that with all humans. In fact, there's been a lot of interest here in Palambila, and a lot of people have asked, can they come and meet Lola? So when I know that Lola's around and I've said, yes, come and see her. This is, Lola, and she goes away. She just disappears. So she's not fond of every human. I think I just became one of her favorites, thankfully.
It's probably the loving nature. And you said exactly what I was thinking at the same time, how intelligent of her to recognize that when she goes to you, you're the protection from the other squirrels. She also seemed to form a bond with Charlie, and it wasn't just our wishing it, but they seem to have a bond in a relationship. Is that true, Sheralee?
Yes, it was quite a sweet experience to actually have here, to see that we've released squirrels at different times, and they've got on, they've actually met each other, had a little sniff at each other and not chased each other or got upset. So maybe there is that recognition that they are, they've been in an adoptive type of situation. And that they feel that they've got something in common, having been in a household, being part of a human and non-human but non-squirrel family. Maybe there was that connection. Squirrels are quite territorial. I've noticed that, with us having them in our home, releasing them, and also looking out for them every day. So it's almost like an informal study of squirrels in our garden. They are territorial, and they do get cross with each other. They also are very loving. It's been such an amazing experience to be a part of all of that, and to see that the two squirrels have actually been able to meet and have that relationship. Yeah. That I also again put into human sort of characteristics. So although it is a made-up story, it actually is a true, real happening in life.
As we like to say, it's based on true events and it's based on real life. And I think the most wonderful part of what you do and what we want to get out there in this podcast, in this particular edition, is to let people know how important nature is, and about rescuing animals wherever it might be and the proper process and where they should go when they rescue it. And I think you're perfectly placed with, the loving family that you have. And that expands upon it, like dropping a little, pebble in the water and the ripples that go out. So with we've got the dogs and the cats and the interaction, but they all seem to get along in a family, but there's still little scuffles and little tiffs. And
that's correct, yes.
Normal family atmosphere. Any new adventures with the that's happened with Lola? I know that we've had the happiness of she's had a little family. How are the babies doing and where are they? Are they still close to hand?
Yes, the babies are here. I can't say which squirrels are the babies because, they do all look alike. And they're not friendly. We don't want them coming and being part of the human interactions. So the babies, I can say they're here because the population of squirrels has definitely increased in our garden, and they do come and visit the peanut table. So, but again, we don't want them to be a part of the interactions with humans or with dogs or with cats, because not all of the animals here on the estate where we live, they're not all going to be friendly to squirrels. A lot of them do chase the squirrels, in other gardens. I've taught my animals that that's not what happens here. So it's how we wanted it to be. Lola's babies, they were quite friendly to begin with, but not for us to touch them, not for them to interact or for us to be able to pet or even hand feed. Only Lola has kept that little characteristic or trait where I can still pass her a peanut or a grape. I can still give her a little pet on her head without her, getting upset or running away or getting scared. But I think Lola, definitely her babies are going back to be where they're supposed to be without coming too close to humans or domestic animals.
It's a wonderful story to hear. I think the most interesting part is that we're able to get your story, Charlie's story, Lola's story, all of them, they're Shecky and Smudge and all of the animal family together and have their adventures told through the eyes of the animal. It gives a realism to it, and it also does show that I believe that they do have their own personalities. When I've been fortunate enough to have a pet, a dog and a cat, and they each had their own strong personalities. But I think letting the world know that there are still people and families out there who will care for them and send them back into the world, into nature where they should be. And that the best part is that you've shared those stories with the first book, The Life of Charlie Ryan, A Squirrel's Tale, and then the one that's just to be out for release, Charlie and Lola, A Tale of Two Squirrels. So it's the second in the series. I always say series because I'm looking forward to more stories. What has pleased you most about getting the stories out into the world?
I think it's been the reaction after people have read the book. It's like, I think the most common comment has been, it's like reading a Kalumbila story. It's a little bit of Kalumbila, that everybody gets a true sense of what goes on here and the animals that are here. But it also gives a lot of, like you said, realism to the animals and the way that they live in the wild and that they should be in the wild. So although we need to have a better understanding of animals in a more, I'm not quite sure what the word is, but to actually appreciate them. Maybe that's what I'm looking for, is to just say we need to appreciate them in the wild. So even if they are brought out of the wild because of needing rescuing or needing nurturing, they need to go back into the wild and still be appreciated for the little animals and their lives that they have. You know, they do love, and they do look after their families. And you hear so many of, you know, where a little boy or a little girl has gone out and shot a bird with a pellet gun, or, you know, it's not how it's meant to be. That is not, you know, you need to understand that animal has its family, it has its little circle of life. And I think a lot of people don't really get to appreciate that when they don't put the human qualities there, or the human personality into that animal, and then they are able to start appreciating what that animal stands for and the life that it lives in the wild.
I think that's what came through when I first received the stories, was getting into the persona of Charlie and the wonderment of life. And I think when we have that, each of us do, the wonderment of life itself, and figuring out about, oh, the Smarties, they must be wonderful. There must be a Smartie tree somewhere. It's those little details that make it so wonderful, because we all love Smarties. We all love our little treats, and the peanuts, and all of the personalities and little details. So thank you for sharing this with us. We want to get this out, to everyone about nature, and about the books, and sharing Charlie and Lola's story, which is going to release in the UK on summer solstice, which is the 21st of June. We have that available for pre-sale, just to let everybody know. And keep up on the series, because I will have chats with Sheralee, so we will have more coming through. Is there anything else that you kind of like to say to anybody out there about rescuing little animals, Sheralee?
I think it's always good to keep it up to, to leave it to those that know how to look after animals. Not everybody does, and their good intentions end up with a bad result. So, here it was without a doubt, we were the only people who were able to step forward and help these little squirrels. There isn't a vet available. There is no rehabilitation center. There is quite close to Chingola, which is about 2.5-3 hours drive from here. And when I spoke to the doctor there, the vet in charge, her name is Talita, and she does the chimpanzees or the primates at a center called Chimfunshi. And she said to me, if I was willing to try and rehabilitate or to look after the baby squirrel when it came to us, she would help me as much as she could with the knowledge. So I used and drew on her experiences to be able to do what I've done. But it's not for everyone, and I really do think if you do find yourself a squirrel, it is extremely hard work. Often I say to Karen, please let there not be another squirrel this season, because it is difficult. It takes a lot out of you, and if you're not prepared to put in that time and effort, it will result in tears and a very upset sort of situation. So, as I say, if you have the knowledge, good, that's wonderful. But if not, then leave it to the professionals and the experienced to do what needs to be done.
And absolutely, I think that's the key aspect, is that you have to accept if you're going to accept the responsibility, that there is a responsibility to it. And I think it's best that whatever the local community is in Zambia, Kalumbila, wherever that local community might be, to find out who they can go to. So Sheralee, I wish to thank you very much for the first author interview, and about nature, most importantly, with the Jasami Bookworm podcast. as always, a pleasure to see you and to chat with you. And hopefully this will educate a little bit more of the world, not just your corner of the world, but the world expanded. So thank you very much for this today. I'd like to thank all of our listeners. We will be, this is a new podcast, and we will be doing it on a weekly basis. And the author interviews will contain a little twist, not just the normal, what do you do on writing, but you never know what we're going to ask and surprise our authors with. So we thank you very much and look forward to our next podcast. Thank you and have a wonderful day.